Ruth Perry sits in front of me, her image repeating infinitely in many mirrors glued to the walls of a cubicle-sized room in which she teaches music. My aunt's name is Ruth too, so when this Ruth recalls her days of youth spent behind a piano, turning the pages of her sister's sheet music, I can't help but think of a story my mom told me, which ends in tears and covers sought under a piano bench in an effort to avoid her sister. When I imagine Ruth Perry and her sister as children, it's not nearly as upsetting. The image is peaceful. 70s melodies spill from coal and pearl embedded in weathered oak. Ruth, a slim young girl, soft-spoken with wild brick curls and expressive eyes, follows 5 black lines riddled with familiar silhouettes spelling chords, arpeggios, and harmonies. Mine is not a musical family. Truth be told, I am a little jealous of Ruth's musical upbringing. Not everyone is lucky enough to have an older sister's shoulder to read over, but Ruth was. Following along with her sister's Elton John scores was only the beginning. She eventually learned to play piano, clarinet, guitar, and various exotic percussive instruments. Ruth never found a career in the music industry donning revealing meat suits or risque pasties. She never twerked on Robin Thicke, and I don't think she wakes up every morning feeling like P. Diddy, but Ruth has carved out her place in the music industry. She gigs several times a week, fully clothed. She teaches music at the Community Center of Music and Arts at Finn Center, CSMA, and she takes on numerous other musical jobs as they present themselves. Ruth makes an honest living in an industry with a reputation for corruption and failure. Ruth Perry grew up in the Berkshires of Massachusetts playing clarinet. She didn't sit at the back of a sweaty music room in her middle school pretending to play classical while she gossiped with her peers. No, Ruth Perry was quite serious about clarinet, and she was quite good. Ruth was in the midst of being groomed to play for the Boston Pops, a highly regarded all-American orchestra in Boston which specializes in popular music. Playing with the Boston Pops was her dream, and she was well on her way to doing just that when she hit a wall. Ruth could not hit the high notes required of leading-level clarinet players. It was not until a decade and a half later that Ruth found out her jaw wasn't properly aligned, impairing her ability to hit notes a considerable distance above the staff. More unfortunate than the news she received was the sad little girl who was inexplicably unallowed to grow with the music that meant so much to her. Soon after she gave up clarinet, Ruth's family moved to Arizona. The transition was very hard on her. In addition to the general loss moving brings, friends, home, temperature, comfort, Ruth experienced the loss of clarinet. It was about this time she picked up guitar, which became a primary outlet for her frustration. She recalls, years away from the recovering young girl in Arizona, and across the table from me, sits a grown Ruth Perry. We are at Phil's Coffee, a gem nested in the residential streets of Palo Alto. It was Ruth's suggestion that we meet here, and it is not a surprising choice. It is very easy to draw parallels between the earthy, wholesome aesthetic of Phil's and that of Ruth. Decades of experience and hard work are incapable of robbing her of her youthfulness. She retains a certain level of apprehension for most of our conversation. She is opinionated, but soft-spoken. There is a gentleness about her that bears semblance to a child. She hardly swears, but when she chooses to emphasize an anecdote with an expletive, she cups her hands around her mouth and whispers it. Her eyes bounce excitedly, on guard, as if she suspects the shit police are onto her. Her reserve strikes me as incredibly un-American. She seems to agree with my diagnosis, claiming America is very rock and roll, something she never fully resonated with. Ruth appreciates a more subtle approach. In talking to Ruth about the world of industry, she seems to draw a distinct line between music and entertainment. When I ask her what she would change about the music industry, trying hard to avoid the implication that inclusion in the top 40 is a test of a successful musician, she confidently explains to me that there are musicians and there are entertainers. When making it in the music industry comes up, a common conclusion exists that success is near impossible for honest musicians who mean to sell music instead of their body or soul. Ruth doesn't see it that way. When I ask her what she would like to see change in the music industry, she tells me she's alright with it where it is. People making millions off 4 chords are not selling you 4 chords. They're selling you an image. You're paying not only for the product, but for the atmosphere. Not just for the notes they leave off, but the clothes they leave off. Ruth has no interest in competing with this. In her eyes, musicians are an entirely different breed. The music industry as we see it is not the music industry. The music industry is every gig played for pitch, every transcription by ear, every lesson in a small mirror-laden studio. Success in the music industry is defined not by the bank, but by musicianship and dedication to the musical community. When I ask Ruth about her ambitions, she doesn't confide aspirations of going gold, platinum, or any other element on the periodic table. Ruth wants to collaborate with new musicians. She wants to absorb and understand their cultures. Ruth Perry succeeds in the music industry by playing music.